Poor communication as a problem has been quite observable prior and during the current nationwide protests in Nigeria. Leading to the protests, some government officials couldn't communicate appropriately, and most of their appeals never came through to douse tension and placate organizers of the protests. However, every Nigerian public authority or agency usually attributes its failure to achieve its goal and objectives to challenges such as inadequate funding, shortage of expertise, personnel inertia, lack of political will, policy inconsistency, and others. It would be strange to hear anyone adding the role of communication to the challenges. Yet, the country's most intractable problem is poor communication. Joining us now on the show as we look at the communication lapses prior and during the nationwide protests is Yomi Badejo-Okusanya, immediate past president, African Public Relations Association Fellow, Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, Director General, Nigeria Reputation Management Group of the NIPR. Good morning, Mr. Badejo-Okusanya. Welcome to the morning show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great.
Well, let's start with this issue of communication.
Where are the communication lapses? Why do you say, or why do you believe, or why do other people say that communication could have solved this problem? I mean, Nigerians say a hungry man is an angry man. Yorubas say it's difficult to communicate with a man who is hungry. If there is hunger in the stomach, no other thing will enter the person's head. And this government, all the spokespersons have spoken, all the ministers have spoken, traditional rulers have spoken. They have appealed for calm. They have advertised the programs that they have on the table. They have promised to do more. How else should they have communicated? Where did the strategy fail?
Okay, thank you very much, Doc. First and foremost, I think that the communication should have been proactive rather than reactive. We noticed that when the threat of the protests became intense, that's when there was a flurry of activities to address this. Communication, or let me put it like this, strategic communication is intentional and deliberate. It is something you work at. It is not something you stumble on. And I think that, or I believe, or my professional teaching says to me that this ought to have been addressed right from the beginning. We could have predicted today, last year, May. Immediately, the president announced the withdrawal of subsidy and also the merging of the exchange rate. We knew things would go awry. We expected it. And, you know, it is interesting. I've listened to a lot of programs, broadcasts, contribution. Nobody has really said that what the president has done is entirely wrong, in the sense that we've got to walk this path, whoever had won the election. Yeah. And I remember when 100 days of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration, my firm carried out a survey, and most Nigerians felt that he took the right decision by asking, you know, some of the action. Now, what was the follow-up? What was invested in terms of communication so that a day like this would not come? I think that's where the challenge really is. Nature, they say, abhors a vacuum. And if that vacuum, if that place had not been filled, you would find out that today has now come. What was last year tomorrow has now come today. Today, I think that if you look at the bottom line of what the administration has done, they mean well. I believe that it's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will not sit in his office and want to impoverish Nigerians or want to make Nigerians suffer. But somehow or the other, perhaps it could have been better or more intentionally approached so that I can deliver this to us.
Okay, I hear you that this administration and the president means well. A lot of times we speculate because we don't hear from them to express. Of course, once in a while they'll talk about it. But you're a PR expert. You're a guru in this area. Nigeria as a nation's public image. and the people who manage the president's PR and the country's PR, especially with regards to the power of communication. The first question I'll ask you is this, in line with that. Looking at all the protests that have been happening, would it have been good? Would it have been good optics, good PR for the president himself to come out to speak? He's been speaking through a number of channels, but he himself hasn't come out to speak to the people. Then this tradition or culture of presidents would rather be not seen, or seen but not heard, or just having their people. What do you think? Is that a good way to run PR for them and the nation? Okay,
let me first say that we've moved from where we were. If he had been the immediate past president, he probably wouldn't even acknowledge that anything. No, but the president
has he acknowledged?
At least some people in his office and so on. And I'm not holding brief for the government. I'm saying that there have been appeals, and I've heard him say at some, maybe not directly engaging the people who are the protesters, but through some forum, maybe speaking to the traditional rulers. He acknowledged that this was about to happen, and please appeal to them that it shouldn't happen. Yes, I believe that if you want to get it done, get the person to speak. He's the one that has been given the mandate. He's the one that Nigerians entrusted to move us forward. And I think that him speaking could have changed things. A lot of people may not agree with me, but there's something about looking into the camera and speaking directly to your audience. And it may have changed things, or it would have doused things. Now, I'm sure a lot of analysts will say, no, you don't bring out the president like that. He's too big. He shouldn't be seen speaking to everybody. I'm just saying. I mean, I've heard things like that. I've been around.
That's what I'm saying. So from an expert position, is that a right way to handle? Because, you know, things have changed.
Yes.
Maybe that's the way that PR is, that the less you see, the better it is for the image of the person. Is that correct? Or is it better for the person to
mean, things? There are different circumstances. I would handle it in a certain way. Maybe somebody else will handle it in a certain way. I believe that direct communication helps considerably to douse such issues or tension like we have now.
Oh.
Two things I'll ask you. I know the first, I can hazard your first answer. Do you think, going forward, for leaders and presidents, PR experts should be brought in to manage their PR, not journalists, like they do? That's the first question. Second question, the president was speaking to us. Yes, he spoke loudly. And what he said, he doesn't care about us. You know how? When they bought that when they said they were going to buy the private jets. As of last year, we're talking about subsidy removal and the pain. We're talking about presidential yachts. It was that time, too, they took supplementary budgets to be able to give senators over 150 million to buy cars. It was that time also Wike said 21 billion was set aside and they built up a vice presidential palace. So he spoke. And why I said he spoke loudly is the fact that Ralph Waldo Emerson, and which is a PR rule, like you guys know in PR, says, what you do speak so loud, I cannot hear what you say. So what the president has done has spoken so loud already that the people cannot hear what he said. And he also spoke to the people leading up to this, what's it called? He spoke through the traditional rulers. The traditional rulers that finally came out and they were speaking through threats. Pogs were speaking through threats on the streets of Lagos. Traditionalists were speaking through threats and government didn't operate. Asari Dokubo was speaking through threats. He also spoke by we seeing an agglomeration of pro-government, no to protesters. So that's also speaking. What did you think?
Well, I mean, if you
he's speaking, isn't it?
If you put it like that.
He spoke to us.
Let me put it like this. Leadership is about moving people forward. Leadership is about giving direction. Leadership is about pointing where we're going. And a big aspect of leadership is communication. And a lot of people mix up that communication. They believe that because you are speaking, you are communicating. That's not true. If you want to communicate in terms of government, in terms of governance, it's got to be deliberate, it's got to be intentional, it's got to be built over a period of time, it's got to be from layer to layer. I've listened to a lot of people who've come either on television or radio, and they're speaking, and it's like a cacophony of voices because it's not resonating. So let me put it like this. What is reputation? Reputation is what people believe of you. It is what they think your character is. And what does that reputation, the biggest aspect of reputation is trust.
You think these people trust this government?
I'm coming, and I'm speaking generally first, and then you can apply it to the government of the day. It's trust. Where there is a trust deficit, it's very difficult for you to do anything. And right now, what we're experiencing in Nigeria is that there's a trust deficit. Now, that trust deficit has not really been created only by this government. It has been successive governments over time who have failed. You know, I always give a simple example, and by the grace of God, all of us are parents here. You tell your child, tomorrow I'm going to buy you a bicycle. He goes out and tells his friends, tomorrow my dad is going to buy me a bicycle. And then you don't bring it tomorrow. And he says, Daddy, where's my bicycle? I'll buy it for you tomorrow. I'll buy it for you tomorrow. And then the tomorrow never comes. Then you find, I know someone, let me just give an example, whose father kept on saying, when we were much younger, every summer you will go abroad like your colleagues. Your friends are going abroad for summer holidays. And that person never forgot. And the parent never brought it to pass. The first money that person had earned as a worker, what did the person do? Travel abroad. Because my father was unable to deliver it to me. So in that area, there's a lot of trust deficit right now. Now, what does trust deficit bring about? A lack of ownership. So when we say people should not riot, when we say people should not go out on the street, when they should, the reason why they are not listening is that they don't find any point of ownership in it. I'm sure that nobody really wants to go out and plunder other people. So if you are okay. So what we need to do is that, let's now go back to this administration. This administration, I think what they promised is renewed hope. Hope is an intangible. But in communication, you can make hope a tangible. And it is that tangible, that intangible, that they have not been able successfully to convert to a tangible, to sell to people and paint a picture of where we are going. So that when you say to somebody, don't go and protest or don't do this, don't do that, because this is where we are going. I believe that that picture has not been painted vividly enough. That is why we're where we are now. Even
with their body language, because they're saying one thing and their body language is doing
I do agree with you. I do agree with you.
Disrespect. Their body language throughout this strike was threatening them. The second question I asked you.
Because I didn't answer your question, yes, about the purchases.
Should PR officers do the job rather than journalists?
We've always said that, and my.
You know we're going to eat you up.
I will. Let me explain it to you.
Yes.
They're nurses and they're doctors, and I don't mean any disrespect. No amount of, if you're a nurse for 20 years, it doesn't make you a doctor. Because there are certain things that the nurses do and there are certain things that the doctors do. So I have no problem in media or journalists being public relations practitioners. What they should do is that they should do that conversion. They should go and learn the trade. So you can't say somebody is a nurse and because she's been a nurse for 20 years, and I mean no disrespect to any profession, and automatically one day you begin to call her Dr. Nurse Jones. A nurse is a nurse, a doctor is a doctor. So if a nurse wants to be a doctor, then he or she should go through the process of being a doctor. So back to your question, managing information is something that is intentional, is deliberate, and it is something that you train for. Being a news being a journalist, you are trained to report news. We, as public relations practitioners, are trained to manage circumstances.
Okay. Let me come in here. Look, most journalists, some journalists are not even trained. There are a lot of PR experts who are hacks. So that's not a big issue. There are other considerations. Number two is the point you make about trust deficit. Yeah, we always hear that. It's the same thing. I've been hearing that forever. Everybody knows that. The point you made about government being proactive. Yeah, we've been hearing that forever. These are very familiar tunes. But I would like to ask you specific questions because I started with lapses. What are the lapses that you have observed? Such as one, why is President Tinubu, in your opinion, who is a Democrat, who has come forward to say he too used to lead protests, why is he hiding from engaging with the Nigerian people directly? These are specific questions. I don't want things about reputation, trust deficit. Number two, why is it that Mr. Badejo-Okusanya and Ajuri Ngelale, in your opinion, are often contradicting themselves? Mr. Ononuga will say one thing, Ngelale will say another thing. Both of them will be issuing two different messages. And then why do you think a body like National Orientation Agency has been very quiet in all of this? And just as an umbrella thing, you are talking about direct communication. Do you think if the Nigerian government did not remove fuel subsidy, if food was available, if the forex was okay and people can send their children to school, will anybody be talking about being proactive? Because those are the core things that the people are talking about.
Okay. I don't know. I'm not a handler of the president, so I don't know why they're not allowing him to engage. But what I do know of him is that he himself is an engaging person. If you've ever met him, he's an engaging. In fact, he's the kind of person that if he has met you before, he remembers on what turf and so on and so forth. So I think it's an asset. When we talk about communication, we're looking for leverages. And you bring out your biggest gun when you need to do it. You see in the White House, there are levels. At a point in time, there's a briefing by a certain person, and then in certain instances, the president himself handles it. Yes. So I believe that the bigger the issue, the bigger the president, you should bring out the biggest of your guns. So if I were his handlers, I would probably recommend that. Now, you talk about about jury and Mr. Badejo-Okusanya. First and foremost, you shouldn't talk down at your people. And I find that in a lot of government communication, they're speaking down at their people. It is wrong. You are there at the behest of your principal, and these are the same people who hired your principal. Exactly. They recruited your principal. Don't speak down at them. I listened to an interview, a response to an interview given by, I think, by Mr. Badejo-Okusanya on BBC, and I cringed. I don't think they should. Now, I'll give you an example. You talked about Ajuri, and I'll mention names here. Governor Babatunde Raji Fashola, one day when he was in government, I went for a function it was on a Monday, and I heard him speak. And then on a Thursday, and I'm going to mention names, one of his commissioners, Professor Badejo, I think that's his name. Yeah, I must remember because he has my name. And he was a commissioner, I believe, for transport. And he spoke at another event on a Thursday. And take away the voice, take away the person. They used exactly the same words. And they were different audiences. What had happened? Like I said to you, their communication was intentional. It was deliberate. They had marinated themselves so much that they spoke. And the questions that Professor Badejo was asked did not only center on transportation. He was asked questions about the administration. So I'm not sure that how much of integration has been done so that everybody is singing from the same hymn book, not just Ajuri and Badejo. Now, that would lead me to something else that I'll talk about. Communication is the most underfunded Because what people imagine is that the strategic communication that may come from the office of the minister, you find out that it's perhaps not well funded. I know the minister. He's a thoroughbred communications person. He's a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations. He hasn't spoken to me about this. I haven't spoken to me about it. But I know that those offices are underfunded. And rather, what they would do is give piecemeal to, let's call 10 journalists together and we give them money. Let's call these people, we'll give them money. So sometimes a lot of what should be the most important is undermined. And like I said, I'm not holding brief for him, but I know what he can do if he's asked to do properly. Number 3, NOA is still the same thing. So you would imagine, I've said it to you before, I've said it many times, many times. I've never, and I'm going to be very careful about this, I've never had any interest in a government position. I'm a private sector person. But if there was one office that I thought was very important, the most important, it should be the National Orientation Agency. If we find out, we'll realize that perhaps that agency is underfunded. So they're not doing the work they're supposed to be doing to forestall things like this are not being done because they don't have the kind of resources that would drive them. So you take the money to other places, you take it to industry, you take it to trade, you take it to labor, you take it anywhere else. But the machinery that keeps an administration going, which is communication, is grossly underfunded, underutilized, regarded, if I can use that word.
Would you say underfunding is the challenge, or the fact that they're putting maybe square, round pegs in square holes? I say this because this administration probably has the most number of SSAs on media. That's this particular
president. Coming back to where we're going,
so it's money. Money is going to paying these people. And from the first one, they have WhatsApp groups. They have different groups that are consistently funded. But they are spewing the same rhetoric that is not professional. And in your words, which I agree with, talking down on the people. Is it just a non-appreciation or a lack of talent in that area as opposed to being underfunded? Because these people have people who they put. I can't count the number of media aides that the president has. I can't count. The Senate president has media aides. Plus the president, plus the media aides. When they come out, they speak like emperors.
Communication experts.
But that's what I'm
saying. Let me
so
explain something.
So it's a lack of talent.
There is the politics of communication. And then there's a communication of politics. So what are we doing? We're bringing the politics of communication, and that's where you find a whole retinue of aides. And I become the governor, I become the president.
It's a lack of talent.
Yeah, no. So I'm saying to you, Rufai Hussein is my friend.
Let me put it. Question about should journalists or PR
that's what
experts
I call. That's why I said the politics. That's why I said the.
But we have to hold you on. We have to hold you on because we have to go to Abuja. Yeah.
We have to go to Abuja, where Mary Chinda is waiting and reporting on developments in Abuja. She's live in Abuja. Mary Chinda, good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. It's been a very dramatic one right here at the Beggar roundabout area of the FCT. The police having tear gassing protesters, including journalists. You know, it's so bad that while running for safety, I've totally lost my voice. But the protesters rather, came out here at the roundabout just to protest. They had placards saying hunger day, which means there is hunger in the land. And the policemen had a conversation with them, asking them to go to the stadium. They had some kind of banter. I was almost turning violent, and the policemen released tear gases.
Sorry, Mary.
Tear gases on them. We're still in that environment. But that's actually the situation right here at the Mega roundabout area of Abuja. Protesters scampering for safety, journalists scampering for safety, and the police is still very much around the area, chasing away the protesters and saying to them to go to the stadium if they want to protest.
Okay, Mary. Thank you very much. Please keep safe. Occupational hazard. This is what journalists face. Always getting caught in the crossfire. Please take care of yourself. Well, we'll come back to the studio.
Sorry, let me just say something, because we've got to focus on something. We talked about the politics of communication. So you bring different people in to suit your agenda. So I become a president, I become a minister, and I think, oh, Ayo is my sister now. Yeah, come and walk now. Ah, Doc, you and I have known for how many years now? Ah, come, just come and... Irrespective of the fact that whether it's a square peg, what did you say you do? You are somewhere around that media. Just go. Rufa, you are from my... You understand? So, but when we talk about the professionalism here, is the communication of politics. Okay. So there are two different things.
Okay. Take, for instance, I'm happy Dr. Bati raised the issue of Mr. Ononuga. Mr. Ononuga was a known ethnic, divisive rhetoric person before the election. And he had no apologies. After a very divisive election, you bring in Mr. Ononuga to a cabinet to continue the divisiveness he had started that he said he will never apologize for. Is that not telling us from the top that you want and you don't mind divisiveness?
Again, the politics of communication. Why? Because there are some people who, quote and unquote, worked for the principal to get into the office. And at the end of the day, they must get a share of the... They feel they should have a share.
The proverbial
national cake. Okay. So where is the best place to put this person or that person? I'll give you two reasons. Then that's one. So you then said, put this person here, irrespective of who the person is or what the person had represented. There are true things. When you want to win an election, there are certain kinds of people you need. And then when you get into government, there are certain kind of people that should be there. But now you find out that in many cases, the same people who won the election are the people who were put there. Number two, most governments, most administration, they have what they want to call, we've termed them in Nigerian parlance, attack dogs. So no grief for anybody. You understand? If fire for fire, give them together. So that's what it takes.
Any problem or just annihilate the people?
It's still, again, back to what I've said, the politics of communication. Let's now get through to the communication of politics.
Thank you very much. Well, big takeaway for me, the politics of communication, the communication of politics, and the fact that you have to get professionals. Except that in politics, the leadership recruitment in Nigeria, from the top to the bottom, one of these days, you see a tout will become a minister of the Federal Republic. And then we'll come back here, we'll talk about professionalism. But thank you very much.